Don't miss these 8 signs of mini strokes in the elderly. It could save your life. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgotten why you were there? Or maybe you reached for your morning coffee and the room felt like it tilted. Just for a second. You brushed it off. Just age, you told yourself. Just a little tired today. But what if it wasn't just fatigue? What if those small, fleeting moments were your body's quiet way of asking for help? You see, I've sat across from many patients in their 70s and 80s, good people, careful people who thought they were just having a slow day, and then, days later, their world changed in an instant. A full stroke hit, and looking back, they remembered the warning signs, but no one told them they were signs. That's what we're going to talk about today, the gentle warnings your brain may be whispering before a storm, the ones that don't make headlines, but if caught early, could save your independence, your speech, even your life. So take a breath, sit somewhere comfortable, and join me not as your doctor, but as someone who cares deeply about how you age and how you thrive. Let's walk through this together. Part 1. When the ground feels unfamiliar, dizziness and balance trouble. You're standing at the sink, maybe rinsing a dish or brushing your teeth, and then suddenly, the world doesn't feel steady. It's not that you faint or fall, but it's like the floor shifted beneath your feet, as if someone tilted the room without warning. And your first thought, I stood up too fast. Or maybe, it's probably just my meds. I hear this all the time from my older patients. And in many cases, they're right. A bit of dehydration, a new pill, an inner ear issue, those things can make you dizzy. But when dizziness comes suddenly, when it lasts longer than a few seconds, or when it's paired with unsteadiness, that's when my ears perk up. Because in the quiet corners of the brain stem and the cerebellum balance and coordination live there. And when a mini stroke, or what we call a TIA, disrupts blood flow to these regions, your body loses its sense of center. One patient told me it felt like she was standing on a boat in stormy water, even though she was barefoot on her carpet. That image stuck with me. Here's what I want you to remember. If you find yourself grabbing furniture to steady yourself, if you feel like the room is spinning for no clear reason, or if you suddenly can't trust your legs like you used to, please, don't wait. These aren't just signs of getting older. They might be your brain waving a small, white flag, asking for attention before a larger stroke arrives. The truth is, balance issues can easily lead to falls, which open the door to broken bones and hospital stays. But even more concerning, these could be the very first whispers of a bigger danger. Let's promise each other something simple the next time the world spins without cause. We won't just shrug it off, we'll listen, and we'll act. Part 2. When the world fades for a moment, vision changes. Have you ever blinked and felt like someone pulled a curtain over your eye? Maybe your vision blurred on one side, or your surroundings turned dim, as if dusk suddenly fell though the sun was still out. These moments often pass in silence. You might rub your eyes, blame the lighting, or tell yourself your glasses need adjusting. It's just age. We say, nothing serious. But sometimes, it is. You see, the brain is a map of regions, and vision lives in the back of the brain in a place called the occipital lobe. When blood flow to that area gets interrupted, even briefly, your eyes may still work perfectly, but what your brain sees becomes incomplete or confusing. Some of my patients describe temporary blindness in one eye, like a window shade being pulled down and then slowly lifted again. Others lose peripheral vision on one side, bumping into furniture or struggling to read because the words seem to disappear halfway across the page. What worries me most is how often these symptoms go unreported because they're painless, and they pass. It only lasted a few minutes, people say, but here's the truth: when vision changes suddenly and without warning, it's never something to ignore. In medicine, we call one version of this amaurosis fugax a transient vision loss that almost always points to a problem with circulation to the eye or brain. And studies show that 1 in 4 people who experience this kind of episode will have a full stroke within 90 days if no preventive steps are taken. So here's my gentle advice. If the world dims for a moment, don't wait for it to brighten again. If words go missing from the page or faces seem cut in half, tell someone. Even if your vision returns quickly, that moment was meaningful. It was your brain trying to tell you something. Let's listen closely. Together. Part 3. When the mind slips without warning, sudden confusion. It started so simply. She was watching her favorite game show, one she never missed. But halfway through, she looked at me and asked, "What are we watching again?" Then she asked the same question 5 minutes later. At first, I thought she was tired, but deep down, something didn't feel right. Confusion in older adults is often waved off, chalked up to being sleepy, distracted, or just having a senior moment. And yes, sometimes it is just that. But when confusion comes on suddenly, especially in someone who normally follows conversations with ease, we need to pause. A mini stroke can disrupt the brain's ability to process, store, and retrieve information, even just for a short while. The person might struggle to follow simple instructions, lose track of time or place, or become momentarily disoriented in a space they know by heart. I remember one gentleman, sharp as ever, who suddenly forgot how to operate his microwave. The next morning, he was back to normal. But that lapse was a warning, and unfortunately, no one recognized it in time. 2 weeks later, he suffered a full stroke. Here's how to tell the difference. Dementia creeps in slowly. Mini-stroke confusion hits like a wave, fast, deep, and often clears just as quickly. That's what makes it dangerous. People feel better and assume it was nothing. But the truth is, just because the clouds lift doesn't mean the storm isn't forming. If someone you love suddenly seems not quite themselves, asking odd questions, forgetting where they are, or misplacing familiar names, don't wait. Don't assume it will pass. Sometimes the mind falters not because it is failing, but because it is struggling to keep the lights on when oxygen and blood are momentarily blocked. Let's promise to notice those small changes. They may feel subtle, but their meaning can be enormous. Catching confusion early could mean preserving clarity for years to come. Part 4. The loudest silent alarm. Sudden headache. She sat down slowly, pressing her hand to her forehead. "It's like thunder cracked open inside my head," she whispered. It came out of nowhere. As doctors, we hear about headaches every day. Most of the time, they're tension headaches, migraines, dehydration, or sinus pressure. But once in a while, one comes along that stops someone in their tracks. And that's the one I always listen for. When a headache hits suddenly, reaches full intensity within seconds or minutes, and feels completely different from your usual pain. It may be your brain's urgent cry for help. During a mini stroke, a blood vessel may narrow or temporarily block, leading to a drop in oxygen to part of the brain. Sometimes this causes weakness or vision changes, but in some cases, it presents only as pain, and not just any pain. A sharp, explosive, or thunderclap headache. This type of headache doesn't respond well to common painkillers. It might sit behind one eye or feel like a band squeezing your skull. Some people also experience nausea or light sensitivity similar to migraines, but it's the suddenness and severity that makes it different. One of my patients, a woman in her early 70s, almost didn't come in. "I thought I'd just taken in too much coffee," she said. But that headache was her body's only clue. Her scans later showed she'd had a TIA that could have turned into something far worse. So here's what I always say. If you get a headache that hits hard and fast, if it's unlike anything you've had before, if your instinct tells you this feels wrong, please don't wait it out. Time is brain. And when the pain is the only voice your brain has, you need to listen before that voice goes quiet. You've weathered many storms in life, but this one doesn't have to knock you down. You can choose to shelter early, and that choice could change everything. Part 5. The body draws a line. Numbness or weakness on one side. He reached for his morning toast, and the slice slipped from his hand. "Strange," he said, "my arm feels fuzzy." By afternoon, it passed. He didn't think much of it, but I did. You see, when numbness or weakness comes on suddenly, especially on just one side of the body, your face, arm, or leg, that's a line your brain is drawing, a line it never draws without meaning. The brain is a beautiful, complex place divided into two hemispheres. Each side controls the opposite half of your body. So when blood flow is interrupted on one side of the brain, it's the opposite side of the body that goes quiet. I've met many patients who thought they just slept funny on their arm or had a pinched nerve. But the difference is in the timing and the symmetry. If your arm or leg suddenly feels numb, heavy, or weak, if your smile becomes uneven or one side of your face droops just a little, if your foot starts dragging, even though it worked fine this morning, don't brush it off, please. There's a simple test I often use. I ask my patient to raise both arms. If one drifts down or trembles, I take that as a red flag. The same with facial movements if one side stays still while the other responds. The brain is speaking in code. Something's wrong. It's true that arthritis, nerve problems, and muscle fatigue exist, but they usually build slowly over days or weeks. A mini stroke, on the other hand, strikes like a thief in the night. And often, it doesn't steal everything, just enough to warn you. What breaks my heart is when the symptoms go away and people think they're in the clear. They're not. When weakness fades, it doesn't mean the risk has passed, it means the clock is ticking. So if your body draws a line through numbness, tingling, or imbalance, don't cross it alone. Call someone. Tell someone. That one step could be the one that saves everything else. Part 6. When the spirit feels heavy. Unexplained fatigue. She just sat there. Her daughter told me. Didn't even want to get up and water her garden. That's not like her. And when I asked the woman how she felt, she paused and said, "It's like gravity doubled overnight. We all get tired. A poor night's sleep, a busy morning, a long grocery trip, it catches up with us." But what I'm talking about here is different. This is a kind of tired that doesn't go away with rest. It feels like a thick fog in the body, like you're moving through molasses, even if you haven't done a thing. This kind of sudden, unexplained exhaustion can be one of the most overlooked warning signs of a mini-stroke. Here's why. When your brain isn't getting the blood flow it needs, especially in areas that manage movement, focus, or alertness, it begins to slow down. And because that slowdown isn't painful, it's easy to mistake for simply getting older. But real fatigue from a TIA comes fast. It may arrive without a cause. It may feel like your whole body is heavy, and no amount of sitting, napping, or caffeine seems to lift it. I've seen this too many times to count people who thought they were just having an off day, who took a nap instead of calling their doctor. Sometimes they got lucky. Sometimes they didn't. What breaks my heart is that this fatigue often comes just days before a full-blown stroke. It's the body saying, "I'm trying, but I need help." So if you or someone you love suddenly can't summon the energy to do even the simplest of tasks, don't assume it's nothing, especially if it's paired with brain fog. mood changes, or physical heaviness. Sometimes the spirit feels tired because the brain is fighting harder than it lets on. And that's a fight worth joining early before it becomes too late to help. Part 7. When words won't come out right. The next, their words are tangled, slurred, or nonsensical. You might hear speech that sounds like the person is intoxicated, even though they haven't touched a drink. Sentences that trail into confusion, or words that are completely incorrect. Someone trying to speak, but unable to get the words out, even though they clearly understand what they want to say. The person may not even realize it. That's one of the hardest parts. They might feel completely normal inside while sounding completely different on the outside. Families often describe it like a switch was flipped, and sometimes it flips back just as quickly. That's why many people dismiss it. He just got tongue-tied. But in truth, this may be your brain's way of flashing a warning light, brief, but urgent. One tool we use in medicine is the FAST method. F for face drooping, A for arm weakness, S for speech difficulty, and T for time to call emergency services. That S. It might be the only clue your body gives you. So if your words stumble, or your loved one suddenly starts speaking in a way that doesn't sound quite right, don't laugh it off. Don't wait for them to get it together. Call, check, act. Because every word that comes back clearly afterward is a word you might have saved with that one timely decision. Part 8. A moment gone missing, memory loss and disorientation. She looked around the living room like she'd never seen it before. "Where are we?" she asked softly. "Why are we here?" Then a few minutes later, she was back fully herself, laughing, chatting, making tea, but something about that moment never sat right with her daughter, and she was right to wonder. We all forget things, a name, a date, why we walked into a room, but when someone suddenly forgets where they are, why they're there, or who's around them, and then just as suddenly remembers, that's different. That's not aging. That could be a mini stroke in disguise. Doctors call this transient global amnesia, though not every case fits that label. What matters is the pattern. The person becomes disoriented in a familiar space. They may ask the same question repeatedly, not remembering they just asked it. They may look confused, even frightened, but then seem completely normal again. That bounce back is what makes this so dangerous. The moment passes, and families feel relieved. She just had a little scare, they say. But what if that scare was actually your brain's final warning flare? The hippocampus, the part of the brain that helps us form and store memory, is especially sensitive to changes in blood flow. When it gets even briefly starved of oxygen, memories get scrambled. Orientation fades, and in some cases, a black hole appears in the timeline of the day. What's especially unsettling is that the person often doesn't remember the episode at all. They recall what came before. They remember after. But the moment itself vanished. So I say this from the heart. If someone you love suddenly seems lost, even for 5 minutes, don't ignore it. Don't wait to see if it happens again. Even a short-lived episode of memory loss may be your only chance to change the ending of a much larger story. Part 9. Nourishing Protection. 3 foods that help guard the brain. After all these signs and warnings, I want to leave you with something empowering, something gentle, something you can hold on to every single day on your plate, in your choices, in your quiet routines, because yes, stroke risk is real. But so is your ability to nurture your brain back to strength. One meal at a time. Let me share with you 3 simple foods I often recommend to my older patients, not because they're trendy, but because they've stood the test of science and time. 1. Blueberries. Tiny berries, mighty protectors. These little blue jewels are packed with anthocyanins, a type of antioxidant that reduces oxidative stress and inflammation in your blood vessels. Harvard research showed that seniors who ate blueberries or strawberries once a week had up to a 34% lower stroke risk. Whether in your morning oatmeal or afternoon snack, blueberries support flexible arteries and healthy brain function. 2. Leafy greens, your brain's leafy armor, spinach, kale, Swiss chard. These greens are rich in folate, vitamin K, and lutein. They help reduce homocysteine, a compound linked to increased stroke risk and support smoother blood flow. Even a handful of greens each day tucked into an omelet or blended into a smoothie can gently protect your brain over time. 3. Fatty fish, omega-3s that keep the current flowing. Think salmon, sardines, or mackerel. These fish are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which help reduce plaque buildup, prevent clots, and ease inflammation in blood vessels. One large study found that people who ate fatty fish twice a week had a 27% lower chance of stroke. You don't have to overhaul your diet overnight, but perhaps this week you could add a handful of berries or swap in a leafy green side, perhaps a salmon fillet on Sunday. Because every little choice you make, every nourishing bite is a quiet form of self-respect, of self-love, and of choosing life again and again. So now you've heard the stories, the tiny signs, the quiet warnings, a moment of dizziness, a word that slips away, a familiar room that suddenly feels strange. They don't always shout. In fact, they rarely do. Mini strokes. TIAs are the body's way of whispering that something isn't right, and if we're willing to listen, truly listen, we may have the power to stop something bigger from taking hold. You don't need to be a doctor to recognize what's off in someone you love. You just need to notice. And to care enough to act early, gently, lovingly. Because behind every fleeting symptom is a future that can still be changed. Behind every choice to rest, to check in, to call for help is a life that might continue walking, speaking, laughing for years longer. And I know, this stage of life comes with enough noise aches, appointments, pills, and changes. But among all that, I believe you still have the ability to tune in to your body's softer voice. That's where real strength lies, not in ignoring discomfort, but in honoring what your body is trying to say. If this message spoke to you, if it reminded you of someone you love, please share it. And in the comments below, I'd love to hear. What's one thing you're doing today to care for your brain and heart? Because every story matters. And yours just might be the one that helps someone else listen before it's too late. Thank you for being here, and for taking your health quietly, steadily into your own hands.